Welcome to this video. We will continue where we left off last time. We're going to start setting up the traces for both the player as well as the AI. But there's one thing I wanted to talk about before continuing with the trace, which is I showed you earlier how to how to modify the state that you had. For the player or the AI, they're both practically the same. The only difference that I didn't show was the difference between the AI and the player in terms of states that go into different states. For the player, he has input, so you know what he can do. But for the AI, you can see him attacking, and after he's done, he attacks again. So how do you control the states after a single state is finished or after an ability is done? So for the AI section, we had the attacking state, and each state has a function called decide next state, which fires by the end of every ability montage or just an ability. So if you go here, we are ending the current active ability, and just like the player, identically the same. If you go to the attack ability that you have for any AI, the end ability for the AI, which is taken from the parent, would be the setting the current active ability to be null, and then calling the decide next state function. Now every state that you have for the AI must inherit from the base enemy state. Why? Because you can utilize the decide next state that will determine what the AI is gonna do after a certain ability is finished. So keep that in mind. So what we were doing on the player side is if a button is clicked, we do this try to perform a state of a class. On the AI side, since there is no inputs, we're gonna have to implement a decision maker, and that's how you do it. So with that on the side, we can worry about the trace for now. If we go back to the attack animations for the player as well as the AI, they're both exactly the same. Now, the attack animations, which we're taking from here, have a trace that was assigned to it from the weapon itself, which is base trace object. This is where I want you to have a look and experiment on your own. So for now, base trace object is the one I'm using for literally everything. You can create a child of this, override this function. For me, I'm just gonna show you how this behaves. So for or duration, I'm putting this also for duration, and I'm gonna show you how this works. You can see the spheres working once I'm attacking. That's how it is in a nutshell. So with that in mind, I have a new trace channel of this type. Make sure all your targets or all your enemies have collision set to block in terms of trace channel. So for example, if you go to the enemy or the player, the trace channel that I created must at least overlap one of these. So I'm setting the collision present to custom, and the Tempest mesh trace, the one I created, must be blocked. If you put it to ignore or overlap, it simply won't work. So you can do this either on the mesh, if you want the mesh to be overlapping the trace, or you can do it on the capsule, however you prefer. So for the capsule, I'm just simply trying to ignore it. The same thing for the player, no difference. So after this, it will determine to be hit, and it will call this function. Now on trace hit, like I showed you in the overview, this function is what determines if something can be hit or not. And the rest is about the attack property. Now the attack property is also something I explained to you, but I never explained to you what happens when a certain attack property hits something. So this is what we're going to focus on this video. If the trace is indeed hitting, then something should happen on the AI side. So if I attack the AI or the AI attacks me, we're going to focus on the player attacking the AI. So this way you can know what is happening. So for the player part, the first attack on the montage is 011, which has these traces to control, and the damage is gonna apply. Now for the receiving part, we determined on the overview that every enemy or a player or a character will have some sort of defense property, and that's how you set the defense property. Now the defense property in itself, I'm using the enemy for all the enemy and player for all the player stuff. Now for enemy part, we're gonna have to worry about this particular function, which is called determine impact result. Now, determine impact result has three particular outcomes out of it. We have we have the deflect, we have the block, as well as the hit. Now, for the hit part, it's always gonna run if there is if the local character wasn't found. It's just gonna determine yourself to be hit. If block or deflect doesn't work, it's gonna also determine yourself to be determine the target to be hit. So in this case, we're gonna have to go to the hit state. So how does this work? If an impact result is set to something, this function will fire determine impact result. These functions will fire on the attack property, and then we're setting the values. What you should care about is this one: apply impact hit reactions. That's different per enemy or player, so I'm setting it right here. Apply impact hit reactions. So if something is set to hit or block or deflect or whatever you want to call it, or you want to add or extend, you can do it here. So for hit, I'm calling this function. So let's test this. If you do hit the AI, let's see what happens. So I'm gonna write to him and I'm gonna try to attack him. You can see it stopped me. That means it's running, and I'm gonna see if it returns true or false. In my case, it returned false. So that means that this thing fired. Now I'm gonna clear these. And once you have cleared them, you also need to make sure that the first of all, stop playing if it's playing. You need to make sure that the what do you call it? That the AI property, which is set to hit, has some values associated with the enemy hit ability. So you're gonna have to add some hit reaction animations. In my case, I'm just gonna add one to be for all 4 directions. Let me just show you if there is any weird one right here. Okay, let's hit forward. Let's do this animation. So I'm gonna call it AI protector hit and current active ability, and I'm just gonna use this for the with the mob. So I'm gonna hook these up. And this is something I want to show you in terms of hit ability. Now hit ability is part of hit state. Now hit state, the way it works, just like the attacking, you can have multiple types of hit reactions, and each is associated with a specific attack property or condition if you want to have some. Now for the regular enemy hit ability, there's no condition. I'm simply returning true. And the way I'm utilizing the montages from the data asset by this basic class is just I'm randomizing whatever I pick. So you don't have to use this method. You can simply override this, and you can see me overriding this on the files that I sent to people, whoever is verified on the Discord. You can see me having multiple types of hit reactions, and I'm gonna show you in a little. But for now, let's just stick to random. Now, since we hooked up the one for the mob, let me also hook the ones for the player. I know I called it AI, but there's nothing other than an end current active ability, so I can just use that for the player as well. Because right now it's using the upper body, left, right, back, front for the free ones for the sample. So I'm gonna use this, and let's see if this works. Remember, he has one attack and he should be able to hit me. Right now it's not hitting. Let me try attacking him, and you can definitely see me hitting him. Now the reason why his isn't firing is because we did not set up the traces for him. So we were setting the weapon traces to be on the mesh, while in our case it should have been on the sword. So if we can move this, we can add it here, and the mesh is gonna be this mesh, and we need to make sure that the sockets are identical to the mesh we have set up here. So this one is using the socket 1 to 7. So if we can go back to the player, sorry, the AI, where did I put him? Here. Socket 1 all the way to 7. Make sure there's a space in between. So let me do this. So okay, 1, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'm gonna remove the other last two. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Now, if he attacks me, also you need to hook up the trace that you assigned it to. So it's this one. Now, if we take a look, he should be able to hit me. And you can see the trace is working. That means it's firing as it should, and I'm reacting to every attack he's doing. That means both traces are firing. I'm gonna reset back the duration type for the trace, and I'm gonna open the project I was using to do the demo with. Just bear with me for a little. All the files for the demo you will have it, so you don't have to worry about this part. What I'm trying to explain here is how do hit reaction behave differently for every type of attack. So we're gonna take Lady Maria as an example. In Lady Maria's fight, you guys could shoot a gunshot with your right hand, right mouse button. So for the right mouse button, I was firing a gun. So there was a gunshot, which is an actor I was firing from the gun, and it had a trace of this type, projectile trace object, which is also something you can find in the plugin. This trace object does exactly what the other one was doing. The only thing I was changing here was the radius and adding something on the false path here. You don't have to worry about this. With that in mind, I have also another attack property associated with it. So the attack property, when you create an attack property, is going to have to be assigned to a trace, and that's how I do it. I create the new one and assign it to the property of the attack property to the trace that we have. So the property for the attack had a new or a different tag called property attack projectile gunshot. Now if we go to Lady Maria, and that's where I'm going to show you the differences in multiple hit reactions. Now for Lady Maria's part, AI data asset Lady Maria. Oh, not the clone. 1 second. It's gonna be the Lady Maria enemy. Now for Lady Maria, she has this hit state. You guys, if you double check what you have, you'll find it. What I'm doing in here was I'm checking for can perform state has this condition added to it. So I don't need any of these hit reactions to fire if she's dead. So this one won't matter. So if you check the hit reaction ability, it has an array of more than one. One of them is called gun parried hit ability. Now gun parried has a condition that the received attack property, the one that you shot her with, has a tag of a projectile gunshot. If this is correct, in addition to other conditions, it will continue. If not, this one will deemed to be not working and the next one will try to run. Large and normal, there's slight differences in between. This one works on a thrust type of attack and the other one is a normal one like the one I showed you. So right now you can have multiple attacks and each attack has a specific hit reaction associated to it. Also, you can have multiple attacks, and many of these attacks, like you can see on one of the examples, you will have different attacking states for a different weapon, and each weapon has multiple types of attacks, and each of these attacks do something differently based on conditions. Now each of these attacks, you could specify bosses to react differently to them, or you can also specify one type of hit reaction to one type of attack like I showed you in Lady Maria's part. So that concludes this section. It was a lot to explain. I suspect some of you do not understand this. If you do not understand this, please tell me in Discord and we could reiterate on this section again. For the time being, this should be done. In the next video, I'm going to explain how to set up new states and abilities for the player to use, and we'll take it from there. So see you in the next one.